Indigenous leaders meet in Dartmouth to preserve dying languages.
Because I know that if it's gone, it's gone.
Reeny Smith makes history at the Nova Scotia Music Awards.
Just being able to really inspire people who look like me to know that you can be a musician and be recognized for it.
I've never lived a day without pain, so I don't know what that would feel like.
Well, now there's a new arthritis research center that could help people like her. This is the Video Signal.
But first, we have a story on Movember.
Every year during this month, people raise awareness about men's health issues.
One Halifax man is using his cycling skills in hopes to heal others. Brad Chandler has the story.
They say a healthy body is a healthy mind. And for Halifax's Brock Beaton, nothing achieves both more than his daily bike rides. The 24-year-old started long-distance cycling during the downtime of the pandemic, and has since used it as a way to keep his body active and his mind clear.
I think the best thing you can do for your mental health is to get some exercise or get some sun. I think it's the biggest thing.
On Saturday, Beaton embarked on a bike ride that would not only benefit his own mental well-being, but others as well. He rode his bike for over 6.5 hours from Halifax to Lunenburg, covering a span of 120 kilometers along the Rum Runners Trail. The ride was part of a Movember fundraiser he created that would look to raise money for men's health.
I didn't think much of it going into it, what it meant to do it. And then that morning, when I was really nervous waking up, I kind of thought like, man, this is how some people wake up every day. And I was kind of like in those shoes in a way, but in a different, like more of a physical thing than a mental thing.
Since taking up long-distance cycling, Beaton says it has added a pep to his step, both physically and mentally. A study in 2020 revealed that 87% of cyclists have used riding to boost their daily mental health during the pandemic. In the spirit of Movember, Beaton chose to do his bike ride for men, in hopes that the hobby that has helped him keep a clear mind could do the same for others. A physical activity instructor says cycling can improve people's day-to-day well-being, both in body and in mind.
Specifically, the benefits are greater if people are doing a physical activity in outdoor spaces. Cycling particularly is a great outdoor physical activity. It helps reduce stress. It helps improving people's sleep, which leads to better mental health outcomes.
Beaton's race helped raise $550. That money will be used to help men struggling with their mental health through the Movember Conversations program.
Like I said, like some of these guys have these rough, brutal days and they still have to go to work and get through that, you know. So I was kind of like thinking this as I was biking, what these men are going through every day. It definitely pushed me to go a lot further and a lot faster than I would have normally.
Beaton says something as simple as quiet bike rides to work gives him the breath of fresh air needed to start his day, something he encourages others to do as well. Brad Chandler, The Signal, Halifax.
Arthritis Research Canada has opened up a new base in Halifax at our very own Dalhousie University.
For people suffering with arthritis in the Maritimes, this new center is promising. Ella MacDonald reports.
Arthritis Research Canada has opened up its first center in the Maritimes. We caught up with their newest team member, Dr. Alexandra Legg.
The diseases that we see in rheumatology often tend to affect the joints and cause inflammation or inflammatory arthritis in the joints.
I sat down with competitive cheerleader Jenna Ketty, who has lived with arthritis her entire life.
I was experiencing pain in like all parts of my body through my whole childhood, but I think when I was so young, like I've had pain my whole life, so when I was really little, I thought everybody experienced the same thing because I've never lived a day without pain, so I don't know what that would feel like. Still to this day, if I woke up without pain, I almost think that would be scary because that's not my normal. It would just be weird. But I had it in every part of my body, and then mainly where my hands and my ankles were my main joints that really stood out to them to like look into it. When I was younger, my parents kind of always knew there was something kind of wrong with my health. I had a lot of issues, like I was really clumsy and my hands were really swollen. So my mom kind of always knew and like mentioned it to my family doctor, but it was always like brushed off as growing pains or just being like clumsy. But then when I turned 11, I got really sick with a really bad flu. So I ended up going into the emergency room many times. But then during one particular visit, a doctor really noticed my state and decided that it was time to refer me upstairs to the local rheumatology clinic. And then they ended up telling me that I was diagnosed with juvenile enthesitis-related arthritis.
There are over 100 types of arthritis, and many patients are children.
So we do have many juvenile forms of inflammatory arthritis. During my training, when I did some work in pediatric rheumatology, we would sometimes see children as young as 18 months or 2 years of age presenting with new inflammatory arthritis.
At 15, Ketty found her saving grace, cheerleading.
Sometimes there's been like a lot of pain, but I just find cheer makes me so happy that it's easy to ignore. And I went headfirst into it. I fell in love with it and became addicted. I was on 3 teams every single year of high school. Wow. And then when I was in grade 12, I was drafted onto the provincial team, which is a combination of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick athletes, and we ended up making Team Canada and go into Worlds. And we were the first cheerleading team from Atlantic Canada to ever win world title in cheerleading.
Ketty expressed passion about patient advocacy and sits on 4 advisory boards.
I think the patient voice is important because we're the people that actually understand. You could research arthritis for 10, 20 years and still not know what it's actually like to be in that person's shoes. I just think rheumatoid disease in children needs to be more talked about.
Ella MacDonald, The Signal, Halifax.
Combined, over 7,000 First Nations veterans have served in World War I, World War II, and the Korean War.
On National Indigenous Veterans Day, the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center held a ceremony to honor them. Crystal Green has the story.
Carrying flags, Canadian Forces reps marched into a room. They gathered to remember those who served in wars, including some who did not return. Since 1994, November 8th has been known as National Indigenous Veterans Day. The organizer, Debbie Eisen, served 36 years in Canada's Navy. She and others before her have faced racism.
Indigenous veterans came back from the war. They were not allowed to lay wreaths like other veterans. They were not given parcels of land to do agriculture. Because they were Indian, they were not allowed to own lands. They had to report to the back doors of establishments to receive their medals.
One of the veterans celebrated was Sergeant Tommy Prince, who received 11 medals from World War II and the Korean War.
He came back and was treated with disrespect and ended up dying on the streets in Winnipeg.
Prince was Anishinaabe from Broken Head First Nation in Manitoba. He was the descendant of Chief Peguis, who led his people from Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, to Manitoba. In World War II, he was a scout for his company, the Black Devils. He went undetected, thanks to his hunting and sharp shooting skills. On a battlefield, he disguised himself as an Italian farmer to repair a damaged communications wire. In the Korean War, Prince served in the rifle platoon where he trained new recruits. Indigenous people like Prince were not drafted, but they sacrificed themselves by volunteering.
Indigenous veterans didn't have to sign up to join the military in World War I. When our ancestors signed the treaties, they signed the treaties to help protect Turtle Island. Even though they were not obligated to sign up, they traveled thousands of kilometers.
Decades later, in October of 2022, Canada Post has released a stamp in Prince's honor. Younger generations in Canada's Army are inspired by those like Prince who came before them.
So it's such an honor to be able to partake and help show the significance of our Indigenous veterans.
As the flag bearers march out, they return to duty. Until the next Indigenous Veterans Day. Crystal Green, The Signal, Halifax.
Coming up, the 2022 Frostbite Regatta makes a splash at Sullivan's Pond.
It's just a nice community, nice bunch of guys that we get together with and have a little bit of fun.
That's later on the Video Signal.
Nova Scotia Music Week recently celebrated its 25th anniversary.
It took place over the weekend in Sydney, Cape Breton.
For the first time in its history, an R&B artist has claimed the Musician of the Year award. Mathieu Hébert reports.
Reeny Smith's vocal and piano talents have graced the ears of Nova Scotians at local festivals for years, earning her many awards. Now, the North Preston native is adding Musician of the Year to her list of accolades.
I think it's great, just being able to really inspire people who look like me to know that, you can be a musician and be recognized for it.
This is Smith's third time winning African Nova Scotian Artist of the Year. She says the additional honor of Musician of the Year means that much more.
for me, it's cool because I'm used to getting, artist awards or stuff like that. But to be recognized as a musician, that's the most amazing thing. Especially for me, I started playing piano first. So I wasn't really an artist. I was just, an aspiring musician. And now to have this a kind of full circle moment for me. So I'm happy that I can, kind of be that representation to some people.
After her win, Smith says she's hopeful about representation for local R&B music. She says that folk and fiddle music is just one piece of a musical and historical puzzle.
To say, Nova Scotia is a fiddle town, well, that's based on some people's history and their experience, but they didn't get to see what was happening in Black communities or in Indigenous communities who have musical tradition as well. So to just associate Nova Scotia sound with one thing, it's just telling the history from one perspective.
Smith says she hopes that the future is positive for Nova Scotian R&B artists. When asked if Black artists are treated fairly in Nova Scotia, she had this to say.
I think there is an urgency now to make sure that we're treating people as equal. Looking down the long road, I hope that it continues and that eventually, it'll be to the point where we don't even think about these things.
Matthew Hebert, The Signal, Halifax.
The Assembly of First Nations came together this week.
Over 100 delegates from across the country met in Dartmouth to discuss what they call an urgent plan to revitalize Indigenous languages.
David, you were there. What happened?
Well, leaders from Mi'kmaq and other Indigenous nations are working on this. I talked to Dion Denny, MC of the forum, on why protecting the Mi'kmaq language is important to him.
To see people care so much and people that are in the positions to help, I find that really reassuring to me and to my children that the language is being looked after.
Dion Denny of Eskasoni First Nation was the MC of the Assembly of First Nations Languages Forum in Dartmouth. Denny is a fluent Mi'kmaq speaker. He explains in Mi'kmaq how a non-native woman who lived in Eskasoni learned the language through everyday activities.
She just passed away, but she was a speaker, a fluent speaker, and then she was taught through meals, through weather, land, animals.
Phyllis Gugu is a Mi'kmaq elder and residential school survivor. She tells her story in Mi'kmaq. But Denny explains that when she was in the Shubenacadie residential school, she would speak to ladybugs to keep her language.
When she left the residential school, she kept at her language and going on to her professional career, going on to motherhood, being a grandmother. Now today, she's very proud of her language.
In April, Nova Scotia proclaimed Mi'kmaq as the first language of the province. The government says the goal is to develop a multi-year plan to reclaim and revitalize the language. In a statement, the Minister of Ulnu Affairs, Carla McFarlane, said the act reinforces the Truth and Reconciliation call for governments to preserve, promote, revitalize, and protect Aboriginal languages through legislation and education.
Learning the language is very vital. I know you hear that word a lot. It's vital to have that language. I am fortunate enough to have that language, and I'm really, really proud to be speaking that language. Because I know that if it's gone, it's gone.
For The Signal in Dartmouth, I'm David Shuman. Over in Dartmouth, Sullivan's Pond is known for more than just geese.
They're also home to sailboats crewed by some unlikely sailors.
Chase, this was your story, right?
Yes, I got the chance to witness a first in the club's history. Let's take a look. Sullivan's Pond is big enough to fit a large bird population and also an entire fleet.
They say you're supposed to have a boat that's equal in feet to your age. And unfortunately, that got priced out of my out of my budget, so I had to downsize. So.
From 35 to 78 years old, age doesn't matter to this crew. What's their secret? Model radio-controlled sailboats. A way to enjoy the art of sailing, all from the comfort of land.
I started this as a hobby, a retirement hobby, and I've met some interesting people and have some fun on Sunday afternoons.
Their last race of the season on November 6th was the Frostbite Regatta, but on a day like this, it was more like a sunburn.
I've never been here in November with it being this nice.
This group is known as the Halifax Area Model Yacht Club. It has been around since 2000, but some of these members go back even further.
Well, we've sailed all our lives on big boats.
Some even sailed 20-foot-long boats together in the 70s. According to Jim Goddard, they regularly beat out prestigious squadrons. Today, that competition is still very much alive.
And I've won every regatta this year, which I told them I would do last year when they made such a big fuss over somebody else winning the club championship.
Goddard beat the defending champion, Gary Bugden.
He says he doesn't care, but he does.
16 boats showed up for the regatta, the biggest turnout of the season, according to Goddard. Although they may be experienced sailors, they still know how to make a splash.
That's the first time anyone fell off the edge of the dock, yeah? And it wasn't me, which is even a bonus.
As they stow away their boats, they hope to compete nationally again in the spring. According to Bugden, they've traveled as far south as Connecticut and as far west as Ontario before.
I look forward to traveling a bit again. That was always a lot of fun.
Chase Fitzgerald, The Signal, Dartmouth.
Thanks for watching The Video Signal at the University King's College School of Journalism, Writing, and Publishing. I'm David Shuman.
And I'm Chase Fitzgerald. For more news stories, follow The Signal on YouTube and Twitter, or go to signalhfx.ca. See you next week.